Hi, I'm Coach Pete, and I'm here to talk to you about nutrition. And this is a joint venture between Westchester Wellness Medicine and our good friend Dr. Angelo Baccarelli and ourselves, Jilly and I, here at Team Apollon. So where I want to start is with the question, why? Why what I'm about to explain to you in regard to this lifestyle of healthy eating is the way to go. And it's quite forward and simple in the sense that it is based in clinical research. So this is not even Dr. Baccarelli's opinion. It's certainly not mine or Jilly's at Team Apollon. This is all based upon clinical studies, centenarian studies, and the study of complex systems. So there's little to no opinion in this, and it's all factual based. And this is what we've discovered. The first thing that I want to talk to you about, and that is real important, I think, is to note that this is not an elimination diet. What that means is you may go on, for example, a carnivore or a keto diet for 14 days, maybe even 30 days. Some people I've known have gone on for a couple of months. And what's that doing? What it is doing is allowing you to figure out what foods might be causing, for example, chronic or systemic inflammation. But the point is that these elimination diets are not a way of life for longevity. What we're going to talk to you today about is how to optimize your health, your energy for the long term. You can improve both your health span and your lifespan. So just a quick basic note here on the macronutrients. I think it's really important that people have a very basic general understanding, especially in today's day and age where carbohydrates have they have become the enemy. So carbohydrates are one of the major three macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Let's start with carbohydrates. And guess what, folks? You need them. And guess what? You can't live without them. We are dependent upon carbohydrates for energy. The catch here is that you don't need a lot of simple carbohydrates and you don't need a ton of carbohydrates. So what's happened with the SAD, Standard American Diet, SAD, SAD, Standard American Diet, is that we have become dependent upon, reliant upon, and addicted to processed, refined, simple sugar foods. So these are foods, if you've heard of the glycemic index, just a simple scale of 0 to 100, the higher the food is on the glycemic index, the higher it's going to elevate and the faster it's going to elevate your blood glucose levels. Foods that are found at the top of that list, like white table sugar, for example, that are now found in a lot of our processed foods, are the ones that we want to avoid. So carbohydrates are not bad. The point is that simple carbohydrates are bad. Processed and refined carbohydrates are bad. Soda, think cookies. Unfortunately, some of the breads that we eat have sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and other maltodextrin and dextrose and other sweeteners added to them. Even a seemingly healthy food like Greek yogurt today, you have to be careful of. Check that ingredient label. You see sugar or some form of sugar added. You want to avoid that and choose a different product. The next is protein. We need protein for cellular repair. So for example, if you exercise, which obviously we're large advocates of, the protein that you consume helps with tissue and muscle repair so that you can build lean muscle mass. However, all of these clinical studies and centenarian studies, epidemiological studies that are coming out show that high protein is also not necessary, and there's a formula that we'll give you a little bit later on to determine just how many grams of protein you need. Incidentally, I'll just give you a quick tip now. Our approach is to get the majority of our protein from things like beans, okay, legumes, chickpeas, lentils, black beans, these types of things, and then to get some of it from fish, which would then be called sort of eating a Pescetarian diet, which is mostly vegetables, nuts and seeds, and some fish. Again, we'll get into a little bit more detail. The third of the macronutrients is fat. And again, like carbohydrates, we need fat. Fat helps us with many things, from energy to really important thing, hormones and our hormonal balance and all of the hormonal systems in the body. But we don't need a whole heck of a lot of saturated fat, which would come again from processed foods. and a lot of high red meat or beef consumption. The type of fat that we're after is called an unsaturated fat, which is mostly found in extra virgin organic olive oil and things like nuts. Again, things like walnuts, pistachios, almonds. These are the types of fats that we're looking for. So that's first, is understand the basics of the macronutrients and that we need a balance of all three and where to get those from. Second is to understand a little bit about the history of this way of eating, this healthy lifestyle of eating, and to understand that it really comes from, we're going to call it a Paleolithic, again, Pescetarian diet. And simply what that means is to consume in the largest quantity vegetables. So it's vegetables and then some beans, nuts and seeds, okay, some fruit, fish, especially fish like salmon and shrimp. Lastly, at the bottom of the list is your beef or your meat consumption, which should be infrequent and in smallest amounts. So that's sort of an outline of what a paleo diet would look like. Or pescatarian, again, high vegetables, high beans, high nuts and seeds, a little bit of fish, okay? And then to understand also that the grains today that we eat, unfortunately, may not necessarily be the grains that our ancestors ate. And there is a thing called gluten. And now gluten's been around. It existed way back when as well. But in some of our highly processed and refined grains today, unfortunately, gluten has a detrimental effect in terms of, let's say, joint inflammation or systemic inflammation. So what we try to do is we encourage you to eat whole grains as much as possible, but try to find the gluten-free variety of whole grains and try to go down that road to keep your inflammatory markers a little bit lower or down to a normal level. And then the other word that's sort of a buzzword that's around today that we want you to be aware of, if you encompass all of what we just said, understanding some basic knowledge and information and words regarding macronutrients, Paleolithic diet and Pescetarian diet, and we sort of blended all of these things in together. Think Venn diagram where the circles sort of overlap, would be the word ancestral living. Think of the way your grandparents ate or perhaps their parents ate. You want to eat seasonally, okay, as much as possible, and you want to eat foods that perhaps your ancestors may have eaten. So a simple example would be, let's say, for example, mainly or mostly in Asia, historically they did not consume dairy products and cow's milk. So if perhaps you were of Asian descent, you may not have the gene in the digestive tract and the enzymes to then consume dairy products and digest them without stomach upset or, again, causing inflammation. So to understand where you're from biologically speaking, then sort of to eat from that area or from that zone. So ancestral living is sort of another buzzword, and we're trying to copy, in a sense, what our ancestors ate. Okay, so that's kind of the general overlay. Again, remembering to limit the amount of processed foods. Processed foods were certainly not part of the ancestral diet. In fact, in most cases, they just flat out didn't exist. To limit added or additional sugars. That's not to say that the sugars that are naturally occurring in things like sweet potatoes, or it's still summertime to eat a peach, an organic peach, a nectarine, or a plum. Certainly these things have sugar in them, but these are the naturally occurring. We're talking about processed where there were added sugars into the food that were not naturally occurring. And then to avoid vegetable oils, things like safflower oil, corn oil, canola oil. These things are known to turn rancid very fast while cooking and then give off a huge amount of omega-6s. We need omega-6s in our diet, and omega-6s come from things like ground flaxseed, which is phenomenal for lowering blood pressure, for example, but we don't want to consume large amounts of these types of vegetable oils, again, corn oil, safflower, canola, because they are known to cause systemic inflammation. It is not something that we want to consume on a regular basis. So an alternative, again, would be extra virgin olive oil, and to use that as much as possible, which is high in the omega-3s and linoleic acid and is really healthy for us. Okay? So thank you all for your time, and thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in further coaching, that is either in strength training or in nutrition, please contact me at hi@teamapollon.com. That's hi, H-I, at teamapollon, APPOLLON.com. Email us and we'd be happy to work with you. If you already see Dr. Baccarelli at Westchester Wellness Medicine, we work in conjunction with Dr. Bach to provide these services to optimize your health, wellness, your health span, and your longevity. The websites are teamapollon.com. Remember, Apollon is with 2 P's and 2 L's, and westchesterwellnessmedicine.com. You could also visit us at our YouTube channel, Team Apollon, or on Instagram, also at Team Apollon. Thank you.